Hello. It's David, and welcome to Adventures in the Kingdom. I am the author of Interviewing Jesus the Man. I want to share with you astonishing hidden treasures I discovered about Jesus, buried in ancient layers of theological sediment. In this episode, I ask the question, what does Jesus' sayings reveal about Jesus? Incredibly, not what you would imagine. Modern psychology states, when one speaks, one's inner life and character is revealed. With that, I collected 25 pages of his sayings, set them in a master catalog, divided them into themes, money, food, the kingdom of heaven, and so on, and carefully examined them. Jesus' life and wisdom jumped off the page. Let's look at a few remarkable pearls. Jesus spoke the truth he knew. His metaphors and parables are intimately familiar with an authentic ring of truth. They are not abstractions or truisms or morals or platitudes. He did not read a vast library and regurgitate the words to sound erudite, intelligent, or wise. That's not to say Jesus wasn't literate or that he didn't read. He was, and he did. Reading merely cut a path in the wilderness. To turn this around and say it another way, Jesus speaks about his experiences, and he had a wide variety of them. He walked a path of discovery and hardship. He had adventures, trials, and tribulations. He climbed the proverbial mountain and descended into the depths of human despair, long before he started his ministry. Everyone has experiences, and everyone has ups and downs. They shape us, mold us, and provide the content of our lives. Jesus was no exception. Jesus was also discerning, intuitive, and observant. He paid attention to his circumstances and had a fantastic knack of turning his life experiences and vision into wisdom sayings. In that sense, Jesus was a master orator, public speaker, and storyteller. Jesus brilliantly crafted his metaphors and parables for his audience. He was a genius, a poet, a blacksmith of words. He is cut from the cloth and the tradition of the spiritual sage who does not explain his words, but rather presents metaphor, analogy, and parable. He doesn't involve himself with argument, debate, or rationalizations. He is not like the Apostle Paul in that regard. Jesus simply presented his words and stories and let his audience ponder the meaning, which often perplexed and confused them. Now I saved the best for last. I had a profound epiphany while reading Jesus' parables. It was a watershed moment for me. I realized his sayings were autobiographical. They were of his life. They were of his life story. Not everyone, but enough to see through the Christian portrait. I believe this is Jesus' backstory. Jesus was raised in a caring family with his brothers and sisters on an estate. His father was relatively wealthy, either by growing agricultural products, selling merchandise, or constructing buildings. Joseph may have had his hands in all three. The family had connections with influential people in the Hebrew community and outside of it. Jesus and his family traveled to Egypt when he was an infant. Most likely his father Joseph had connections there and had introductions. At an early age, Jesus sensed he was destined for something grand, and his parents knew this and afforded him every opportunity to grow in that role. At some point, possibly between 14 and 17, Jesus left home and traveled either to cultivate his spiritual nature or to make a name for himself like his father. He was either motivated by frustration and greed or by the desire to have a deeper relationship with God. I can't tell which. That part is hard to see. In my book, I chose the former. While away, Jesus learned much, like community, friendship, travel, and the mystery of the divine. But he also had very profound experiences that were vastly different in nature and outcome. The order of the events is vague, but this is what I surmise. Jesus fell from grace. He was involved in sexual impropriety, which shamed him greatly. He went on to experience the depth, depravity, and desperation of mankind, and to rub salt in the wound he was beaten and robbed. Jesus whirled around in the muck, the lows of lows, for an appreciable amount of time. In essence, he descended into darkness. At the other end of the spectrum, Jesus had either one intense enlightenment experience or many about the vastness of the universe, the nature of the Father, time, spirituality, and love. Finally, Jesus returned home, but his welcome was less than warm. In fact, it was strained. Some family members were upset and rejected him. During this period, Jesus needed to heal, restore, and process all he had learned. The way of peace and forgiveness became his signature trademark. By 30, he felt the urge to initiate his ministry. I am convinced Jesus' message was forged in the fire of his adventures, trials and tribulations, and experiences of the Father. He was lost and he was found. He mixed his own leaven and yeast, his own experiences of the good, the bad, and the ugly into his ministry. Jesus' personal story of the fall, redemption, and ascension was covertly intertwined with his message. In one sense, Christianity is the veiled account of Jesus' missing years, the record of the events, experiences, and ideas that inspired and transformed him. After his return to and restoration with grace, Jesus felt for mankind, like a shepherd looking for lost sheep. He felt compelled to sacrifice his life to restore people and bring them back into the fold of the Father. It happened to him, and he wanted it for others. He was a ray of hope and a guiding light in a desperate time. I know this story is challenging because it doesn't correspond with New Testament theology, with the unblemished sacrificial lamb without sin or the second Adam archetype. Instead, it is one compelling story with immense implications. Please join me for my next adventure in the kingdom. See you then.